I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to the Selena Global Living Podcast, where we talk about real estate and the realities of life abroad. Now, most international buyers are familiar with Barcelona and the Costa Brava, but they might not be familiar with a whole nother stretch of Catalonia's coast, the Costa Daurada. This part of Catalonia offers a very different lifestyle, from chic Sitges to historic Tarragona to more relaxed and practical towns like Calafell and Vilanova. So today we're going to break down this part of Catalonia and who it's the right fit for. My guest today is Jaume. He is my go-to trusted real estate expert on this stretch of Catalonia's coast. And he is a Catalan native who lived abroad and then came back home and now works with international buyers and sellers. So without further ado, let's learn about the Costa Daurada. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know, I love visiting the Costa Daurada, but I haven't spent enough time exploring many of the areas. I've been to Tarragona and to Sitges, so I'm looking forward to learning more about this part of Catalonia. Before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit more about your background and, kind of give us some context about this part of Catalonia?
Well, thank you very much, Vanessa, for inviting me. My name is Jaume, and actually I'm Catalan, raised in Barcelona. I've been living in the UK for several years, and that somehow naturally driven me to understand my land and internationally relating it as a bridge. So I became a sort of like bridge of cultures. And when I came back to my basically grandpa house, that was actually a summer house where I'm located right now in Calafell, in the south of Catalonia. I was a sommelier and working in an international hotel, in a Marriott hotel. And, back then I realized that people love this area. Americans, international people alike. And I thought, maybe it's me now, time to change, to transform my skills into telling people how is life in here. And it worked out quite well, actually. I'm representing sellers and buyers, international and locals alike. And yeah, I would say I'm a kind of an ambassador of this area, really.
Yeah, I think your social media really speaks to that. I think you do such a good job of helping people understand this area more. When somebody is familiar with Catalonia, they've probably, obviously they know Barcelona, they might have heard of the Costa Brava, but they may be less familiar with the Costa Daurada. So how would you distinguish the difference between the Costa Brava and Costa Daurada?
So first of all, we have to place Barcelona in the very middle. And I would say, to make things easy, Costa Daurada is the south of Catalonia. It is 1 hour driving or so from the city of Barcelona. So still, you have coast, very peaceful lifestyle, and this sort of like convenience. Still, you have to remember the international airport of Catalonia is located in the south of Barcelona. So that, just for the sake of being in the south, makes the distance, the commuting time to the airport, much, much shorter.
Yeah. So what would you say are some of the misconceptions about this part of Catalonia?
Well, I would say that people think it's the cheapest alternative. When reality, I mean, let's put it that way, aesthetically, it might be a more humble option. But the reality is that all these houses along the coast are being built for a reason, which is time with family, spent on the weekends or on the summers. That was originally the idea of these towns. And of course, the function of these houses were more driven to be convenient and to be related to the coast. So yeah, perhaps aesthetically, it's not the most sophisticated area, but you need to spend some time and then you realize how life is in here, how friendly, how local, how tranquil is still in here.
And would you say that the area is now drawing more year-round residents, or does it still lean heavily toward a summer destination?
So I have to say that the origins of these areas are summer houses. Of course, there is a historic background, but for what it takes to us now, I have to say that around 40% is all year round people living here, and 60% are clearly summer or weekenders. This has changed after COVID, but reality is that we're still having this strong difference between winter and summer.
Right. Okay. And so which towns would you say are best suited to people who want to live there year round and have, amenities open in the winter as well?
So we have to say that Sitges, Vilanova, Calafell, Tarragona, those four are the all year round enjoyable life.
I love that you named those four because I think these lend themselves to international buyers who are looking for a landing pad, whether that be fully year round or they want to be able to come in the winter and go back to their home country in the summer and rent it out in the summer. These towns, I think, offer the best flexibility for that type of buyer. So these are the ones I want to talk about. So let's start with Sitges. I'd say that's the one that most people have heard of. It's the closest to Barcelona. You can get there by train from Barcelona, right? And it has a very strong identity. It's known as especially welcoming to the LGBTQIA community. But what else should people know about Sitges?
Well, I have to say that Sitges attracts lifestyle. The people that goes there is because it has this, I would say, necessity of being part of a bigger community. And one of the most impressive things Sitges has is that with English, you can sort out your daily life. You don't even need to change your language. You can just come straight to Sitges and life happens, community life happens in a click of your finger. So this is something unique to Sitges that I would say is rare than other areas in Spain. Sitges is perhaps one of the only places in Spain that you can just straight go in there, speaking in English, and you will feel integrated next day. And it is a place for open-mindedness people. It is a place for more like lifestyle than family. I would say that currently the population of Sitges is 50% international and 50% local. It is really a blend of Americans, Northern Europeans, and French alike, perhaps. So, yeah, Sitges is a very social place, really. Life happens on the streets. And I don't know if you never heard about the Carnival. Sitges Carnival is internationally recognized. And there is the Sitges International Fantastic Film Festival of Catalonia, well known for the Halloween terrorish movies. I have to say that Sitges from the 60s and the 70s became one of the, let's say, more open-minded areas of Spain, more tolerant to the LGBT community. And that attracted quite a lot of international people to this area. And that has an impact, for sure, in prices as well, in real estate, and the stability of the real estate market. So when other places in Spain are having a big crisis in real estate, Sitges maintains its stability due to being actually these international first residents.
You said something interesting that I want to drill in on. You said that you can just land and speak English. If a foreigner said that, I would get hate comments. So as someone from Catalonia who kind of recognizes that, let's talk about that a little bit and unpack it. So how do the locals feel about how international that city has become? And do foreigners still feel welcome there, or do the locals feel like they're being pushed out?
So that's a very good question. I could say that there's two types of locals, right? The ones that eventually will benefit out of this internationalization of Sitges, because clearly one of the major benefits of Sitges has been its internalization, overall financially. And of course, all the people related to hospitality, all the people that has businesses, and even people that are actually just selling their houses. That has been a major benefit. And you can see that how still, depending on the ages, let's say baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials are blending very much with these newcomers. So locals are socially blending with them as well. I mean, this is a reality. Sitges is a very LGBT town. And, when cultures goes together, they attract each other. There is this sense of interest and curiosity. And of course, people that live in Spain is because they have at least some sort of interest in what local life is and social life is. And of course, there is people that they do not like the international people coming. And the reason being because one of the first impacts the international community has is that they increasing the house prices. And there is a sense of reality that experts or international buyers are, with their high incomes, are increasing definitely the price of the houses in Sitges. So that's a reality as well. But again, you have to see the whole balance, how life plays and how the daily life is in Sitges. And you see harmony, you see beauty, you see Sitges is improving. And the reason why as well is because of you guys, of international people that has interest. And look, economy matters. and Sitges is benefiting from it. That's a reality, socially, financially, and culturally as well. These people are becoming a patron. They actually buy the art. The creativity in Sitges never stopped, and actually is living a beautiful moment. You see Sitges is thriving culturally, artistically, creatively. Yeah.
The beauty of cultures blending together and people coming with intentionality to add value to the place that they move to, right? We always have those people who are anti-immigrant, anti-change, anti-woke, as we would say in the States. But really, what is that? I mean, like, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So these towns that are welcoming people from all over the world and do embrace it continue to grow. So let's talk about housing prices, because definitely Sitges is not a cheap place to live. It's like quite expensive. So what should somebody expect? Give us some examples of what you could expect to get for a 2-bed, 2-bath with an ocean view, and then maybe a 4-bed villa.
I'd say Sitges is one of the most expensive towns in Catalonia, full stop. And for a single villa, let's say facing the sea, of course, Sitges villas are gorgeous. They are like 1920s palaces. I mean, you really need to be rolling there, because these
Well,
are
well,
sensational. The detail, the level of artisanal that we just forgot all these artisanal techniques. Really, we cannot do like plaster anymore the way they did it. We cannot do these arches anymore. I mean, all this is lost. But anyways, so for these gorgeous villas, let's say 500 square meters, lovely lush gardens, very aged gardens, you could be easily talking between 10 to 14 million euros. Of course, there is more humble examples. And it's still, if you're in the promenade in the first row of the city, you're going to be paying easily between 7 to 9 million. There is actually the second line of the sea, let's call it, in Sitges. There's these lovely residential areas called Albinet or Terramar. Not talking about the center of Sitges, because the center of Sitges do not have single detached villas. Has what you call the townhouse villas, fishermen houses. They are lovely. They are just into these narrow streets, all painted in lovely whitewash and blue colors. By the way, blue color in Sitges has a history in itself. Even there is a color palette where blue has its color called Blue Sitges, which is in a special twist of, let's call it, a intensity of blue. So for a detached villa in the second line of the sea, let's call it, in Terramar or Vignette, you're going to be paying between 4 to 6 million euros. I remember I sold a Sitges house 3 years ago from an American couple. They sold it to a Dutch couple. They sold it for 2.5 million. Asking price was 3 million. Negotiations went through. Actually, that was the price they wanted, 2.5 million. That was a easy sale, actually happened in like less than 2 months.
so let's bring it down to more normal people prices. So 2-bed, 2-bath condo, maybe within walking distance of the center of Sitges, but not in the center. What could you expect to get in that range?
Mm-hmm. So clearly, if you want to come straight in and do not make any renovations, you're going to be paying between 500,000 to 700,000 euros. Yes.
Okay. And so are there any communities? I understand that there's a community that's being built up on the hill just above Sitges a little bit. You wouldn't be able to walk into Sitges, but they're building out some areas in the hills that are maybe a little bit more accessible. Are you familiar with those areas?
Yes, of course. Sitges pressure is actually overtaking the mountains surrounding Sitges. Those are Levantina, Montgavina, Intmar, and Valpineda. Valpineda is the oldest one and very close to Sitges. Valpineda is the most expensive of those, let's call it, exterior Sitges areas. So for a single detached villa built between the 70s and early 2000s, you're going to be paying between 1 to 2 million. Of course, all these areas are higher, so you're going to get for sure sea views. That's one of the advantages. You want more distance from the sea, you're going to have to take your car most likely. But you're going to have these gorgeous sea views over Sitges and, of course, the whole town of Sitges. I would say, I don't know if I would call Sitges a town or a city, but certainly it feels much more urban, much more citizen-like. For instance, if you compare with Vilanova, Vilanova is much bigger in amount of the population of it. But Vilanova feels much more town. But Sitges, even though it's smaller, it really feels more like a city. At least has the vibe of more like a urban feel.
Okay, good. So that's a great segue. So let's talk about Villanova. What distinguishes it from Sitges, and who would consider Villanova as a good place to land over Sitges?
So Vilanova is like Sitges was 25 years ago, actually. I like to call it the little Barcelona, and mainly because of the structure of the town. It has these ramblas, ramblas, for the people that might not know what it means, is this long promenade, is this long paseo where people normally goes to walk. And it's a much more family oriented, much more quiet, full of more traditional attire and shops. So definitely Vilanova, it feels more like a Catalan place, less international, even though the international community is clearly growing, but is not that related to the sea. It's not that of a beach town. It has more kind of life per se, more like a city life, if I may say that. And yeah, it feels it's clearly more Catalan in a way, more of a family environment.
Does it have international schools and private schools?
Well, because physically Sitges is so close by, and because of Sitges has this wide offer of international schools like French, English, then Vilanova benefits from that. Vilanova is 10 minutes drive from Sitges. So yes, you still have to take your car, but you have a wider range of English schools, at least more than 4 different styles, of course, depending on the way you are driven to. Sorry, the way you want to have, the way you care about pedagogy. So it has different styles. And then at least it has 2 French schools as well. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So thank you for pointing that out. So it's only a 10-minute drive from Sitges. I think somebody coming from Los Angeles or really anywhere in the United States, it would almost feel like it was the same place. So different personality, just different part of town, right? So how do the prices in Villanova compare to Sitges?
Sitges is again one of the most expensive areas of Catalonia. Everything if you compare with Sitges is going to be affordable. Mm-hmm. And I would say Vilanova is very much of a flat and a semi-detached house. So of course prices cannot compare with other locations because it offers coastal life, but mainly has to be in flats on semi-detached houses, so terrace houses. It doesn't have much of a detached villas, even though there's an area called the Aragai, which is locals know it as the tennis area, which is a bit detached from Vilanova. Really, you kind of have to walk between 20 to 30 minutes to the center of Vilanova from that more of a single detached villa area. So of course, for these flats and these apartments and semi-detached houses, you're going to be paying between 300 to 500,000 euros. It really depends on proximity to the center and of course maintenance of the buildings, because Vilanova, let's remember, Vilanova is a bit older, so the portfolio of properties in Vilanova tends to be from the 60s, 70s. Many of them requires renovations. If you want to go for these villas in this area instead of Vilanova, the Aragai, you're going to be paying from 500,000 to 1 million, but it's very rare. Rotation of these big properties for 1 million is rare in Vilanova. They take quite long to really take off, really.
Yeah, I would imagine, right? So could somebody live in Villanova without a car, or is it a place that requires owning a car?
Oh, Vilanova is clearly a walkable city. Vilanova has layers of constructions they've been adding up over the years. And Vilanova has centered this idea of walkability. And so they still have age population living in a good, let's say, 1 kilometer from the center, but still walkable. Why? Because Vilanova is very flat and Vilanova has shops everywhere. So Vilanova has grown very much spread over all the territory, and you find services, doctors, hospitals, shops alike in all the spread of the land, not just in the center. This is one of the most, I would say, positive things Vilanova has. That is so spread in the territory. So all the citizens has same services everywhere.
And is there train access to Barcelona?
Yeah, of course. Yes, it does. It takes around 40 minutes to commute. Actually, Vilanova is a big commuter city. When you're taking the train from Barcelona to all these southern Catalonia, I like to call it zone 4, zone 5, zone 6, because of the commuting minutes, right? So you keep adding 50, 60 minutes. You can tell in Sitges and Vilanova is where good 80% of the train lives. So people lives in these cities, and then you can tell that there is clearly a big commuting city. It's such an easy place to be commuted.
That's really good to keep in mind. A lot of the people that I talk to have this dream of living car free or mostly car free after living in America and having to drive to the grocery store and just everywhere. So the idea of being on the train line, being able to walk to the grocery store and the doctor's office, maybe have a car that you use when you want to go explore on the weekends is a really attractive offer. And these kind of towns offer that kind of small city life with those kind of amenities, and even the ability to be in a house with a yard, right? So I think that's something really worth keeping, pointing out. Let's switch gears and talk about Calafell and those surrounding areas. I don't feel like this area gets a lot of the glamour headlines, but it does seem very livable. So what do people miss about it?
Calafell, first of all, it doesn't try to impress you. Calafell, again, is very convenient. Calafell origin is to be close to the city of Barcelona and to have a relaxed, family-friendly lifestyle. So as per now, Calafell has grown a lot. And again, there is a blend of internationals, locals alike, but still being very local. And I would say Calafell, after Vilanova, if you go from Barcelona south all the way, Calafell takes you around 50 minutes to get to the city of Barcelona. And again, 40 minutes, 35 minutes to the airport of Barcelona. Calafell is, after Vilanova, one town that you still have year 365 days a year. And this is something that happens only in Calafell and then Tarragona, the big city of Tarragona. So Calafell was built by my grandparents, the baby boomers, right? So they raised this area. This is where my house is. Currently, I live in here, and that's where my market generally is, in this part of the south of Catalonia. It's all composed by mainly detached villas. Of course, the closer you go into the beach, the more demographic pressure it is. So you start seeing apartments, semi-detached houses. Calafell is a all-year-round area, very close to Barcelona, very close to the airport, and still having this Mediterranean, this coastal feel, this very relaxed lifestyle. So Calafell is perfect for families and for retirees.
Yeah.
So one important thing is that in this area of Catalonia, there is hospitals every 20 kilometers. And this is just the way Catalan people set their own structure of life. So it's such a convenient area that you have supermarkets and big shopping centers every 10 kilometers. There is train lines commuting to Barcelona. There is easy access to Barcelona and the coast alike by two highways, the C32 and the C31 and the AP7, big roads that connect you with the rest of Spain easily. It's a very flat area. If I want to say that, I want to reinforce this message because all Catalan coast tends to be very hilly. It tends to be very climby. And the south of Catalonia, so the Costa Daurada, it tends to be a much more flat surface. So it goes inland between good 2 kilometers. And that matters when you have to, if you don't want to have a car, carry your groceries, or actually just, go for a walk. That's important. Of course, the higher you are in the hill, the better the views. But convenience matters. And especially for retirees, these areas are very convenient because of all this spread of services along the coast. And again, all the social life, all the buzz, it is very close by. It happens to be always in the coast. This is important. And again, it's a big difference between Costa Daurada and Costa Brava.
That's really interesting. So in Calafell, how does that compare to Vilanova in terms of getting a single family home or a 2-bed, 2-bath condo?
Sure. It is interesting because every time you live in Barcelona power sphere, the prices goes down. But you still have Sitges so close. And this is a short video I made for my socials. For a house in Calafell, let's call it a detached villa, let's call it 400 square meters, lovely garden, no needs of renovations, 4 bedrooms, swimming pool, closed door services, is an average between €500,000 to €550,000. So for the same villa, for the same, let's call it distance to the beach and distance to the services in Sitges, this villa would cost 2 million. And between Calafell and Sitges, there's only 15 minutes driving. So you
Wow.
think twice when, 15 minutes drive worths or not. And Calafell, again, offers a more perhaps humble or not as sophisticated and glamorous lifestyle in Sitges, but truly to me is a hidden gem on price right now. I know it won't be hidden gem for too long, but I think right now Calafell, Cunit, Segur de Calafell, Vendrell, and a few more several towns are really, really hidden. Nobody knows about this place. And this is surprising. I mean, yeah.
I love that you brought this up because a 15-minute drive into Sitges to buy something for a quarter of the price, I mean, sounds like a good time to buy because the pressure in Sitges is not going to end anytime soon. Spain is actively encouraging immigration and tends to be more high net worth immigration. And the prices aren't going down anytime soon, as far as we can tell. So very interesting little nugget. Thank you for sharing that. So let's continue down the coast and talk about Tarragona. So Tarragona is a really interesting city. How would you describe Tarragona to somebody who's never been there before?
Tarragona, Tarraco, actually back in Roman times was one of the most important cities on the imperial Rome. So this feels through and through, really. But clearly is a capital of province. So it really feels a much more developed, much more all year round city with its own activity, economical activity. Still looking at the sea, it's coastal city, still connected to this sense of relax and family lifestyle. But truly it is a city, a major city.
So one of the things that I've noticed when I guide people through Spain is everyone has a different tolerance for grit. So how lived in a city feels, the texture of it, the noise, how well maintained it is. How would you describe Tarragona in terms of its level of grit? And maybe you want to contrast that to Sitges or pick another town that we've talked about and kind of compare how you would describe the grit feel in those cities.
So I would say Tarragona is a much more real place compared to Sitges. Sitges it feels a bit more like I would say even like a theater, really. It is a place where lifestyle flows internationally. Tarragona is a daily working people place. It's middle class. It has its own Catalan texture. So it has so many of these little shops. People clearly lives on the streets. So there is very often all these local fiestas, local parties, which are again more than 2,000 years old tradition events. So the city feels very much of knitted experience. So still, it has this international touch. But clearly, if you've never been to Tarragona, you will experience what Barcelona was good 40 years ago. Still, this level of one of the interesting things is you don't see that much of a globalized shops and services. So you have local cafes, you have local restaurants, you have local shops. You don't see much of a globalized like Barcelona is, right? You see more like Starbucks chains and so on. So it still is owned by Catalan people. Um, it has this lovely Rambla, again, this paseo, like Barcelona Ramblas, right? Where everybody is there on Sundays, on Saturdays, and you feel again this very family, this middle class, this very tranquil lifestyle. Again, we are in Mediterranean lifestyle. And these things are said in a way that sounds like a pigeonhole. But until you are not here, and you are here for a longer time than a weekend, then you understand what it means to go to a restaurant and have an after dinner or after lunch for 2 hours. You don't have this sense of, I don't know, I would say the stress of being alive. You shift the perspective of what actually life matters.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like Tarragona is a really good place for people who want to feel like they're really going to have a chance to integrate, where, they want to learn Catalan, they want to feel part of the fabric of the community. They don't want to be pigeonholed in a sort of a international or expat enclave. Tarragona could possibly be a good fit for them if they really want to like live in with society and integrate. Is that a fair assessment?
100%. Because when you have a community that keeps increasing, you start creating your own communities, right? Rather than mingling with the locals. And as you mentioned, This is very interesting. I don't know if we should go into the topic of like Catalan or Spanish language, because this is a hot topic really, and it will be as long as Catalans we exist. And I have to say that as a Catalan, I'm very, very glad when I see an international person coming to Catalonia and choosing to learn the Catalan language. Because fair to say, Catalan language is the one I feel emotional with, is my language, is my maternal vernacular language, but it's never been seen as a practical language because Spanish has been seen a much more powerful, much more dynamic language. And this is Catalonia in a way, this is our language and we can help by speak our language. And I think Tarragona is still the place where people will talk to you in a way that wants to make you feel part of a community. So yeah, to make you feel part of a community is to speak you in Catalan, because this is the way I speak to my beloved ones, right? So yes, I think, I know I mix a bit the subject here, but I wanted to say this. This is emotionally is important. So yeah, I think Tarragona is still.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And that is always a topic of conversation. So a lot of people say, so I'm moving to Catalonia. Do I learn Catalan or Spanish? And it is a hard decision for someone who doesn't speak either of those languages, right? You really, at the end, you need to speak both because, if you're going to travel outside of Catalonia, it is helpful to speak Spanish, right? And there are reasons to learn Spanish, but it is to be part of the community, especially if you have kids in school. Not speaking Catalan definitely puts you on the outside. My husband and I have learned many times that my son can swear in many languages that we don't know. And a parent will say, "Do you know what your son just said?" Yeah. So let's talk about housing prices. How does Tarragona compare to the other cities we've talked about?
So again, Tarragona has its own dynamic, right? So it is a city. So then we should be fair to compare Tarragona with Barcelona prices. And again, they are playing a different league. Tarragona for, let's call it a 4-bedroom apartment, because I will be talking about apartments. Tarragona, a portfolio of detached properties and semi-detached is much, let's call it, it's about more of an outsider layer of a city. It really doesn't happen unless you own a palace from, 15th century. So yeah, for a good 4-bedroom apartment, renovated, well connected to the terrace and being located centrally, you'll be paying between 300 to 600,000 euros. The 600,000 euros being a mint spot property really, with of course parking, elevator, even perhaps a community pool. But yeah, this is in average.
Okay, that's great. So definitely as we move farther from Barcelona, we get a lot more bang for our buck for sure. Right? In a big way. Now, Tarragona does draw a lot of tourists. It has a big amusement park and it has a history of tourism. How does that type of tourism impact daily life? I mean, we see, for example, on the Costa Brava, the difference in tourism between Lloret de Mar and Plaja d'Aro and Begur, right? They just attract different people. Alicante is a great example too. So what kind of tourism could you expect to interact with if you lived there full time?
Well, for sure, tourism is clear, and the impact in your daily life, it is, I would say, in the areas where Tarragona accumulates a history and where Tarragona shines, historically mainly, then you will see that the population has increased around 30 to 40%. But again, those areas in Tarragona, for instance, the Coliseum, which is very close to the sea, or the medieval or the Roman quarry streets, well, those are not centrally located anymore. The city has somehow grown out of these areas because geographically, those areas tend to be like in a hill area, so that, invasions were kind of good place for invasions and so on. So yes, tourists are discovering these areas, and you can see that there's an impact in these very, not pigeonhole, but located in these very old areas. The rest of the city feels like a city, and it feels like a non-touristic area. Daily life happens the same. Traffic jams happens the same. People going to school to drive the kids to school, and people going to work as it was any other city in Spain, which doesn't have the impact of tourism. So I would say, answer your question, it feels that there's more tourists around, but they are centrally located into the very touristic areas, which are not literally located close to the more of a daily Tarragona area.
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. All right. And so in our last section, I want to talk about Salou, and I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that properly, but that sort of resort town area. There's some luxury golf resorts in that area. So help us understand how that section of the Costa Dorada fits into everything else we've talked about.
So Salou is still very much driven by tourism. Clearly, it hasn't changed. It's been like that since the good 70s and 80s. And yeah, you can tell how Salou breathes differently from summer to winter. And I would say that if you're interested in investing in a property that you can rent out or you can Airbnb it, go for it. It's a good place to invest. So I wouldn't say it's the place for retirees or families with kids. I think it's more of a summer-driven. I don't know if you ever heard about this theme park, PortAventura. PortAventura was one decision of the Catalan government to drive even more tourists to this area of Salou and Tarragona. And so it worked very well. The numbers of tourists keep increasing every year. There is plenty of hotels. But yeah, again, it's not of a lifestyle for a person living all year round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you want a golf resort lifestyle, it is a wonderful place to consider. If you want to come in and out, maybe you're doing the 90 days on, 90 days off, you're retired. The Cambrils Marina is nearby. If you love to sail or into water sports, the area has a lot of things to recommend for it. I think if you have children in school or you need easy access to Barcelona, and you're living there year round, it probably doesn't offer the amenities. That's my sense. And you've spent much more time there than I have.
You are right. You are right. And you just hit the nail when you say about this 90 days feeling. I think again, it's been catered so much to international base. Like it has this more of you just leave after the 3 months, you lock your key and you forget about the flat. And it's still, you're going to come back after, a year and your food is going to be the same basically as you left. It has this feeling of free worries. And clearly, I would say that Cambrils is different from Salou. Cambrils, it feels more like a self-contained living town all year round. Salou was determined to be of a much more of a package, like a product to cater these people, this crowd. I think Cambrils, which is physically just next door, really. There's a house, one is Salou and the next house is Cambrils. It just divides one simple street. But Cambrils has a much more, again, gritty, much more real Catalan vibe. I think, if you're going for lifestyle, I think Cambrils has this edge, this a much more softer, realistic. I know my words are a bit sharp, but I would say, I would define it like that. Cambrils is a much more realistic Catalan, if that's what you're actually looking for. Because if you're just looking for this feeling of summer disconnection, then they're different.
Yeah, they are. I would say Salou feels more of like a bubble. It's if you want to just land, have everything turnkey, really clean, manicured services, that's great. And then Cambrils feels a bit has a bit more grit to it, a bit more lived in
100%.
feel, but great restaurant, beautiful promenade, lots of, bars, restaurants, places to go. So I think it really does add a benefit to Salou because can feel like a bubble. It's nice to be able to go to lots of different types of restaurants and have a little bit more of a lively atmosphere. And you're right down the street from it. So at least we kind of have that in that area. Yeah. So I'm so glad that we were able to break down all of these different areas. And of course, there are other towns and villages that we don't have time to touch on. But when you have somebody come to you, an international buyer or renter buyer, come to you, and they would know they want to be on that part of the coast, but they're not exactly sure where to land. What are some of the things that you ask them or help them self-discover to point them in the right direction?
So most likely you're going to come from the airport, and I strongly recommend you to take a car and drive around a lot. This is number one. You need to take your car, and I will tell you where is the places you need to drive, and this is something I've been doing. I'm taking my phone in my car and I'm doing content for my socials and my YouTube. And I'm driving with my car, just recording the areas, and I'm posting this up, and it's working so well. You need to see with your eyes what is this place like. The challenge will be that because you come from such a different way of seeing life, from a different culture, you will take a time to really ingrain yourself into what's the areas, what's a good area, what is not a good area. Really, I think you need to get in touch with somebody that can be giving you valuable and quality information. And because we're talking about quite a big area, really. We're talking about from south of Barcelona, it's good 50 kilometers all the way down. So you need to know the bits and bobs of each of these areas. And again, communication is key. You really need to engage with an agent, which an agent is the bridge somehow of these areas. Yeah, what better than an agent, really, an honest agent to tell you what the difference is. Another thing you need to know is you need to do some study beforehand. I mean, what is your priorities? You want to remote work? You want to have easy access to Barcelona? Are you a commuter? Are you a person that come here with a family? You want to live all year round? Is it just a summer area? You just want to spend your summers in here or even your winters? Because, by the way, weather, you need to know as well how the weather is in here. The average, I would say this in grades, centigrades, I don't know in Fahrenheit. In winter is around 8 to 12 degrees Celsius. And in summer, it's not as hot as the south of Spain. It reaches between 28 to 35 Celsius. So these things need to be taken into consideration. Do you study, contact with a good agent that can honestly drive you to the areas and, get a car and drive along and go to restaurants.
Yeah. Yes, go to restaurants. And the thing that I always tell people is you have to slow down and you need to come back at night, because I feel like a lot of people who are on scouting trips drive through towns in the afternoon,
That's a good one.
which is a terrible time to get a sense of it. Other than a big city, everything is going to be closed. It's going to look dead. You need to go back on the weekends and in the evenings, like late evenings, 9 p.m., 10 p.m.
Right.
And then you'll get a much better sense of what is this area really like. Right. And absolutely, I think having an agent on your side to guide you. I say this all the time and I'll just repeat it again. Whatever you do, don't just contact random listing agents because you see a pretty listing online. Find your own agent, find your own buyer specialist who will guide you. And you may end up buying one of their properties, but they can also help you identify other properties and be your advocate on your side of the transaction, which is really important. So just because somebody has a listing out there doesn't mean they're qualified to help you navigate the process. So it's so important to have the right agent on your side.
If I may say, you need to be house-centered. I get that. It's very important. But I think you should be more lifestyle and location-centered because you don't know the area. The house is somehow easy to see, right? Just physically observe walls, software, hardware, as I like to call it, kitchens, size of the plot. That's kind of easy to see. But what is not easy to see, which is going to take you much longer, and as you pointed out very correctly, you need to come different times of the day, really, where the sun orientation is and so on, and people, how demographics are. Those are not coming into a half an hour viewing. Those are not coming into, because again, house-centered, you saw the house and that's your house. Your house is 50% of the game. The other 50% is location and lifestyle. And that, you need to get that information is crucial. And that's not coming from a house. That's coming from an agent that honestly works in your benefit. Again, this is important. I want to say this through because in Spain, agents, they don't work as in the US or in the UK. There is no such a thing as a buyer agent and seller agent, which there is, fair enough. But most of the times, you're going to find agents that are working for both. And you might be thinking, well, that's a conflict of interest. That's not ethical. Well, this is so ingrained in Spanish culture and it's so ingrained on real estate business in this country. Even though it's getting transformed and more buyer agents are appearing, traditionally in Spain, the agents are sellers agents. And so, look, I've been doing this business for a while now and I'm still on business. And that means that the way I get my listings and the way I get my business is through referrals. That means I'm doing things well. That means, sorry to repeat that many times, but what I want to say with this is that in a negotiation or in the purchasing of a property, both parties has to leave that room, as I like to call it, slightly unsatisfied, both of them. And you have to work with respect and balancing out, finding this equilibrium between both parties, which is sellers and buyers. And there is no secret recipe. There is no secret formula. The price of a house is conditioned by the seller. The agent might be able to push their opinion and their point of view. In many cases, is the case, happily enough, but not always is the case. So to know if the price of a house is correct or not, or you're overpaying or you're underpaying, is something that has to be fight through. And owners in this country, generally baby boomers, which is all this area of south of Catalonia, are basically owned by baby boomers, they really have emotional ties to their houses. And it becomes very hard to be opinionated correctly into what the price of a house is really. Again, the agent will tell you if this house is correctly priced or not, regardless of if this agent works for the seller or not. Because again, in Spain, agents works for both parties in a trying to be fair manner. At least many of us were going to do that, honestly, because that's the way we are. We want to be a good people and we want to do our business properly.
I appreciate you sharing that and sharing that perspective, because I think it is such a re-education for people when they come from abroad. And, the whole process is new, the culture around it is new. And so that's why we're here to guide people so that they pay a fair price, that they feel protected, that, one of the examples that I like to share about the importance of having an agent who is used to working with international buyers is the tax bill. So I've had two examples of this. I have a friend here who went through the listing agent, a local agent, and he just never bothered to mention that, hey, by the way, the castral value on this house, you're going to be taxed on $850,000, but I know you negotiated the price down to $450,000. I'm not going to bother to tell you that the tax bill that's coming is going to be based on $850,000. So you can imagine you close, a month later you get the bill, and it was a lot higher than she was expecting. This happened to another friend, $1 million property. They never mentioned that there was going to be a tax bill. They got they were in Catalonia, it's 10%. She got €100,000 bill a month after closing on his property. Yes. And so it is so important that you work with an agent who knows to mention these things and is ethical and is looking out for your best interests too. Yeah. So that's my pedestal that that I got from. But those are good examples of why it matters who you work with.
Yeah, well, that's clearly neglecting such a crucial thing that you may just completely ignore because it's your daily bread, right? So you don't think about it. But reality is that people don't know these things.
So I'm so glad that we've had this conversation and had a chance to dive into towns on the Costa Daurada. I'm going to include a link to contact Jaume in the comments below, so you can reach out to him if you'd like help looking for a home in this part of beautiful Catalonia. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Vanessa. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope this was very helpful for your fan base.
I hope this conversation answered some of your questions about the Costa Daurada and helped give you a little bit more direction on which parts of this stretch of Catalonia's coast might be right for you. If you are interested in exploring the Costa Daurada, make sure to reach out to Jaume using the form I've included below. And hey, if we haven't met before, I'm so glad that you're here and that you found this content. I help people find their place abroad by connecting them to my very carefully vetted network of real estate professionals. So whether you're looking on the Costa Daurada or in Sevilla or up on the green coast of Spain, I likely have a trusted agent that I can refer you to. But before you find an agent, you need to start the visa and immigration process and find your way to Spain. And I can help you navigate that whole process. A great place to start is with a 1-hour Move Abroad consult with me, and I'll include more details below so that you can connect with me. Also want to mention that I'm leading 5 scouting trips through Spain this year. And again, I'll include the details below. But if you want to see many parts of Spain and get a feel for what your life could look like here in Spain, these group scouting trips are a really fantastic way to do that. Check the link in the description. I'd love for you to join me. Until next time, keep traveling, keep exploring, and keep building the life you dream about.